Hello, reporter room investigators. Come on in, come on in. I want to wish you and yours a happy Easter. We're going to be talking about the Bryan Kohberger case, and oh boy, do we have a packed show. We're going to be talking about new information on Buddy the dog. We're going to be talking about the judge's new rulings, the number one thing we all missed, and the judge's new rulings, will this help Bryan Kohberger? Will this hurt Bryan Kohberger? And then we're going to do the 5 biggest takeaways from this Ada County judge. My name is Jessica Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects, and share with you how to do the same thing. If you have not subscribed to Reporter Room, it's free. So please subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up and make sure you come on up and talk to me in the top chat or drop me a comment in the comment section below if you are part of our awesome replay crew. I do want to do a shout out to our subscribers and our mods. I know this is like a big holiday weekend, so thank you for everybody who's joining me today. And Jazz is one of our head mods, along with brother Mike. And Pepper, thank you so much also for modding today. Happy Easter, Midwest. So come on in, tell me where you are from, and let's go ahead and dive into all of this. We have a lot to get through. Happy Easter to you too. Happy Easter. Yeah, please give this a thumbs up and let the YouTube algorithm know that we are doing a wholesome show. Okay, so boy, is there a lot of new information from this judge. So let's go ahead, and I do want to say from the outset that Bryan Kohberger is innocent until proven guilty. With that said, this is not a court of law. I am not a judge. You are not a judge. We are not the jury. So we are going to be talking about this case in terms of Bryan Kohberger, because the motions are being filed by the defense team on his behalf, by the prosecution. They're going to try to prove the case against him. And then the judge is making rulings on, of what is going to happen in Bryan Kohberger's trial. So we do have to talk about this. So come on in, tell me where you're from. So a flurry of orders were handed down on Friday, just 1 week after the courtroom showdown between the defense and the prosecution over critical evidence in this high-profile case. So we're going to start off with talking about Buddy the dog, and then we're going to dive into the judge's rulings. I'm going to do an overview. And then for those of you that want to get a little bit more wonky, we're going to deep dive into it. We're also going to be doing, not just talking about them and sharing them, but we're also going to talk about them in terms of how these will help or how these will hurt Bryan Kohberger's defense. We're going to do the 5 biggest takeaways from the judge's rulings and the number one thing we all missed. So we're going to start off talking about Buddy the dog. This is Buddy. And Buddy disappeared from his own yard on October 21st of 2022. Pam and her husband, Jim, the Colberts, or Colbert, I don't know how they pronounce it, but we'll say Colbert. She was left badly shaken because Buddy was taken in the night from his own yard, which was fenced, and she found him. I'm going to watch my words here, but basically skinned, and law enforcement said they did not think that a human being, that they did not think an animal did this, that this was a human being that did this. So we've talked about it before. Pam told the Daily Mail that she called the sheriff's department, and the supervisor had told her what happened and how they found Buddy. And she said it was like a deer that someone hunted. He had his little legs had fur and his little face had fur. And she said that he was filleted like a fish. She found the dog collar. So some people have attributed this to Brett Kohberger, and I just want to urge caution here. Brett Kohberger did have a dog collar, but the Colberts found their own Buddy's dog collar. They have it. So I know some people were trying to attribute this to Brett, but this is not the case. He may have had a dog that had a collar, but this was not related to Buddy because his owners still have his dog collar. So she said everybody was, nervous and scared, especially in light of what had happened at the 1122 King Road house. So this interview occurred after those crimes. And the authorities told us that, they have no indication, this was early on, that what happened to Buddy was related to what happened at 1122 King Road house. However, the Latah County Sheriff had passed the information on to the Moscow police. So the Moscow PD did receive this information. So what can law enforcement learn? And we also know that BK had animal hairs that were found in his Pullman, Washington apartment. And we are going to discuss the judge's rulings and how these help Bryan Kohberger and hurt Bryan Kohberger's defense, and the 5 biggest takeaways from the Ada County judge, and the number one thing we all missed in just a moment. So please stay with me. But Buddy's animal hair can be traced. A lot of people were asking in the comment section, so I thought, well, let me find out for you guys. You do a microscopic analysis, linking a specific animal to what is more complex. So they can do what's called a forensic DNA analysis on Buddy's dog hairs and match those potentially to the animal hairs found at Bryan Kohberger's house. Now, these hairs at Bryan Kohberger's apartment could also be linked back to Murphy the dog. Now, Murphy the dog belonged to Kaylee Gonzalez and Jack Decor. Now, because they were, able to retrieve so much of Buddy. Now, I did read some comments. People said that, and let me show you my sourcing on this too. Let me take this down for a second. Let me show you my source on this of where am I getting this information? So my sourcing on this is the National Library of Medicine. And it's a hair histology article. I'm not going to read the article to you because it's really wonky, as a tool for forensic identification of some domestic animal species. But that is my sourcing on that. I just wanted to share that. Okay. So let me put this up in case. So let's continue on. So I did read some of your comments about BK being a vegan and therefore he wouldn't do away with a dog, but what he's charged with, which is doing away with actual people, young people who were in their own homes, minding their own business, in their own bedrooms, in pairs. They should have been safe. They were together. But, so I don't think his vegan necessarily is going to stop somebody from doing something like that, have committed a crime like this. Again, he's innocent until proven guilty, but he was viewing himself as a sack of meat, according to his TapaTalk posts, and he was viewing other people as a sack of meat. So this is really concerning. It's a form of depersonalization, but it's also, devaluing his own humanity and other people's humanity, in my opinion. So we're going to talk about the 5 biggest takeaways of the county judge. We're going to look at the rulings, but we're going to look at them, not just read them, wonky style. We're going to actually dig into how these help Bryan Kohberger or how they hurt Bryan Kohberger, and the rulings do both. And then the number one thing that we all missed. There's like one big thing we all miss. So I don't think that BK chose to be a vegan for a moral reason, in my opinion. I think it's more likely related to the visual snow. The other thing that's really common for people who commit crimes like this is to start on animals. And I'm watching my words here. BTK was known to have begun on animals. Son of Sam David Berkowitz also began with animals. And we know that BK ordered a knife. He ordered a knife sheath on Amazon in March of 2022, and he ordered a knife sharpener. So, why did he need to sharpen the knife if he was only using it one time? Because I think that he would have been fantasizing about these crimes. I think he would have been practicing to prepare himself for the crimes. And what would he have practiced on? And in my opinion, Buddy the dog, and they also found a rabbit with a similar thing happened to him nearby. And if you think about where the Colberts lived, they lived between Bryan Kohberger's Pullman apartment and between the 1122 King Road home. So this would have been an area that he would have been passing through, because we knew about the 11 cell phone pings leading up to the crime. Now we've heard that there were 23 times that his phone was pinging in that area. So let's go through the 5. And so most psychopaths do start with animals. And so I just think it's unrealistic that he would have bought a knife sharpener and not needed it. I think he bought a knife sheath, and a knife sharpener, and I think he practiced. And the October 21st date is so significant because this was the day that he was told by his professors that he was failing to meet their expectations. So I think that he would have been enraged by that. So let's go through the 5 biggest clues that point to uh, BK being the perpetrator in the Buddy the dog case. And then we're going to talk about the judge's rulings. We're not going to just do a wonky style, although I will do some of that if you want me to, but we're going to deep dive into how they actually help BK's defense, how they actually hurt BK's defense. And then we're going to do the 5 biggest takeaways from this judge's rulings. And the number one thing, this is interesting, that we all missed. So please stay with me. So let's go through the 5 big takeaways of Buddy the dog. Number 1, the closeness of the crimes, both in proximity and time frame, seem like too big of a coincidence, in my opinion, to overlook. The October 21st of 2022 was significant because of Bryan receiving that email from his professor telling him he was failing to meet expectations. I think this would have enraged him. Number 2, since BK was arrested, no other animals have been found like this in Moscow, Idaho. And when you think about the proximity of BK's house, of where he lived, it was en route from BK's Pullman apartment to the 1122 King Road house. The Colbert's home was in between. So what are the odds that there are 2 people out there using a knife in the same town at the same time? And remember, Moscow, Idaho had not had a crime like what happened to Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana in over 8 years. And I think Grizzly True Crime put it, really well. She said, well, he came in and he, all of a sudden we had these crimes, and then he's arrested. No more people have been done away with. No more animals. She didn't talk about the animals, but, this is me. No more animals being done away with, and nothing like this had happened in the 8 years leading up to this. Number 3, just because BK is a vegan doesn't mean that much, considering what he's been charged with doing. So he's been charged with doing away with 4 wonderful, awesome young people with bright futures ahead of them. And I believe that he was using the veganism to either treat his visual snow or for some other obsessive compulsive reason. So I don't think, in my opinion, it was for ethical reasons. Number 4, we know that BK's cell phone was pinging in the area where Buddy the dog lived. We were told about the 11 phone pings, and then the 12th phone ping on 9 a.m. November 13th, just hours after Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana were done away with. And so now we're hearing that there was 23 times that he was in the vicinity of the house, and law enforcement is lining up those cell phone pings with video footage of the Hyundai Elantra on the night of the crimes. And although he switched his phone off during the actual crimes, and we're going to talk about what the judge decided on his alibi in just a moment, so please stay with me. But he definitely had his phone on when he was taking detoured routes to the crime scene and taking detoured routes, or I should say routes, not routes, back to the crime scene in an effort to avoid security cameras and to make it look like he was out meandering around, in my opinion, for a drive. Even Ann Taylor claims that BK loved to go out at night and drive around, and Buddy the dog disappeared, and he also liked to run. She threw that in there too for his alibi, which the judge is not accepting. The Buddy the dog disappeared from inside his own yard at around 2 a.m. So I think the fact that Buddy disappeared and then was found butchered is significant. Number 5, BK did do fillet of fish, but his employer said he wasn't good at it and he didn't last very long. So let's just put that aside. There's a lot of other things on BK's resume that I haven't heard a lot of people talking about, and that's that he was employed as a butcher. A butcher would know how to do something like this. A butcher would feel comfortable with a knife. And again, why would you order a knife sharpener if you weren't planning to practice? I believe he planned. I believe he practiced. I believe he fantasized about it. I believe he did. He did this, in my opinion. So we're going to talk about the judge's rulings, how to help. Will these help Bryan Kohberger? Will these hurt Bryan Kohberger? And then we're going to discuss the 5 biggest takeaways from his rulings, and then the number one thing we all miss. So let's talk about the rulings. I don't want to get too wonky about this. I know some people have been, reading that, and that's fine. I'm not doing that. I just, I can if you want me to. I just think it gets a little dry. I think it's easier just to go through. So we'll start here. My sourcing is the Idaho Statesman. And let's just go through some of the rulings, and then I'm going to deep dive into the more of them. So the judge said that Dylan, he's talking about the roommate's testimony here. He's Dylan. He characterized it as remarkably consistent over the 5 interviews with police following the 4 young people, Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana, being done away with, as well as her testimony before a grand jury that unanimously indicted Bryan Kohberger on 4 counts of first-degree M. Watching my words here. And the judge denied the defense's effort to keep the testimony hidden. And he also rejected the argument that it would be unfairly prejudicial to Bryan Kohberger. So he wrote, DM's testimony about bushy eyebrows is highly relevant in this case. DM, he's talking about Dylan here, is the only witness to the intruder responsible for the homicides. It is the jury's task to determine whether the defendant is that person. So what he's saying is he's not going to decide. It's up to the jury to decide. To compare with a physical trait, the prosecutor said in prior court filings that they plan to admit into evidence this selfie right here that BK took about 6 hours after they believe the crimes were committed. I'm just going to watch my words here. Quote, whether or not Bryan Kohberger, this is Ashley Jennings, prosecutor, wrote, whether or not Bryan Kohberger can be described as having bushy eyebrows is a factual determination to be decided by the jury. I agree. I think this should be up to the jury to decide, not the judge. Judge also ordered, he gave about a dozen rulings. We're going to go through all of them. And if you want me to deep dive them, I would be happy to do that also. Let me know. I'm going to check in with chat in a second. Let me grab a sip of water. So in several more wins for the prosecution, the defense had some wins too. The judge also denied a defense request to allow an expert to testify about BK's autism diagnosis and the ways it may affect his courtroom behavior. So Ann Taylor wanted the jury to hear about his autism. He allowed some testimony from the Idaho State Police Crime Lab expert that the defense team was hoping to block. So that's 2 of them. So the bushy eyebrows come in. The defense expert that wanted to testify about BK having autism, nope, not coming in unless BK takes the stand. And then he's going to allow some testimony, the judges, from the Idaho Police Crime Lab. This expert, the defense was trying to say she wasn't qualified. He pointed out she had 20 years of experience working at this crime lab. She was certainly qualified, in his opinion. So the defense cannot use testimony on Bryan Kohberger's behavior. Despite opposition from BK's attorneys, the judge ruled against a request to allow the defense to present expert testimony to explain how BK's autism spectrum disorder would affect his physical demeanor during the trial. The attorneys, however, would still be allowed to question prospective jurors about their potential bias against behavior associated with his diagnosis. So they can still ask that during the voir dire. The judge concluded in another Friday order that the jurors will be instructed on what evidence to consider in determining guilt or innocence, and that BK's demeanor during the trial is not one of the aspects they're allowed to consider. If BK decides to testify, evidence about his behavior could become relevant. So the only way that Ann Taylor is going to get the autism diagnosis expert on is if BK actually testifies and exhibits some odd behavior on the stand. Since publicizing BK's autism spectrum disorder diagnoses. Ann Taylor and his defense team have argued that the jury's bias against his physical traits and behavior might impact BK's right to a fair trial. Several experts interviewed by the Idaho statement echoed the defense concern, and that BK's developmental disability could affect how the jurors perceived him. And the judge wrote that he is not blind to the fact that the jury will be just scrutinizing BK's behavior during the trial, but he said that allowing testimony about the defendant's autism amounts to an endorsement by the court of improper evidence. He said introducing the evidence risks confusing the issue. Presenting BK's autism diagnosis could also mislead the jurors, waste time, or possibly unfairly prejudice both the defense and the prosecution. He said to allow it essentially invites the jury to consider Bryan Kohberger's character to determine guilt, which isn't allowed and could risk playing into jurors' sympathies. He said, if anything, presenting evidence of the defendant's autism will focus the juror even more on the defendant's behavior than they would have not have noticed in the first place, he wrote. His ruling fell in line with the Latah County prosecutor Bill Thompson, who told the court that there wasn't any authority to allow expert testimony during jury selection about Kohberger's developmental disability and the way that it might affect his behavior in the courtroom. He wrote, this is the prosecutor, it's irrelevant to any of the factual issues. In this case, it's irrelevant to the elements of the offense. Frankly, all it does is confuse and try to play to the sympathies of the jury. The judge said he'd reserve ruling on whether to allow expert testimony regarding BK's obsessive compulsive disorder. That is, the prosecution introduces any evidence, including Kohberger's compulsive hand washing or his need to wear gloves to avoid germs. So this doesn't really help Bryan Kohberger. I don't know if it really hurts him either. I think maybe his demeanor is weird because he's weird. I've told you what I think about the autism diagnosis. I think it's interesting that Ann Taylor absolutely refused to allow an independent expert, not a prosecution expert, an independent expert to examine him. And then the prosecution said, well, we have these diagnoses, but we don't have any of the test results of how these Dr. Orr got to this diagnosis. So they requested that also, and Ann Taylor turned it over. But she didn't, to me, if it was good, if this would have been like a positive thing for Bryan Kohberger, I think Ann Taylor would have included it in her motions, right? She would want, she'd be waving it, like a white flag, because she's trying to get the capital punishment taken off. So I suspect that there were no imaging scans done, and that this was, I'm not saying Dr. Orr is wrong. I'm just saying I don't think there was like any independent imaging. And I think the fact that Ann Taylor didn't refuse to allow an independent expert examine him and come to their own conclusion, I think is also telling, in my opinion. If she really believed that he had autism, I think she would have welcomed that. And she would have been filing the reports with her motions. She would have been attaching them just like she did with Cy Ray's statement. Because if it helps Bryan Kohberger, she's going to include it. She didn't do that in this case. So I think that is very telling. The expert can testify about the knife sheath DNA transfer. So this also solidified two other requests from the defense team, including Rylan Nolan, who is the manager at the Idaho State Police Crime Lab, who is going to testify about the transfer of DNA. Now, Becca Barlow, the defense team, they didn't want Nolan to testify. She asked that Nolan's testimony be excluded. She said there's really no way for a particular analyst in a particular lab to determine how and when DNA was placed on an object when you don't have any facts behind it. She said to this to the judge. In other words, unless you see something or you know something, you have the facts of the method of transfer. It's not possible. Now, according to the prosecutors, BK's attorneys have said in other filings that there is good support good support. Their client's DNA was found on the knife sheath. And now, Ann Taylor's saying it might have been planted. But the judge disagreed. He said that Nolan can testify based on expertise. It is, quote, more likely, these are the judge's words, that the DNA sample was transferred directly to the knife sheath than not. He said, quote, the fact that she admitted she cannot render a conclusive opinion about how the DNA arrived on the knife sheath and that it is possible it was through a secondary transfer does not render her opinion inadmissible. It's simply an acknowledged limit to her opinion, he wrote. Judge also indicated during last week's hearings that he would not bar Nolan from using the word touch DNA, but asked the prosecutors and defense to avoid using the word as much as possible. So he said, the defense was raising concerns that using the term would insinuate BK touched the knife sheath. And the judge wrote, I am not trying to police the experts within their own field who use the term as part of their expertise. Basically, what he doesn't want is somebody to say the word touch DNA, because that is a term that even defense experts have used. He doesn't want somebody to say that and then the defense immediately call for a mistrial. So he's not going to police the words. He just asked them to, try to police it themselves. More information, more motions from the judge. The judge denied the defense's other request, which was to prohibit the prosecution from asserting that the white vehicle seen in several surveillance footage is the same vehicle or that it was BK's Hyundai Elantra. The judge wrote, while it would be speculative and improper for the prosecution to contend that the vehicles are the same, it doesn't stop them from using an expert witness to draw that conclusion. Investigators are allowed to use their observations and inferences about the car's alleged travel route to decide whether or not the vehicle seen near the off-campus 1122 King Road home and other Moscow neighborhood are the same, which the police labeled as suspect vehicle 1. The judge said the jury is free to weigh this evidence and the investigator's testimony against that offered by the defendant and decide for itself what the surveillance videos depict and whether it supports its ultimate conclusion bearing on the defendant's guilt. We're going to be talking about BK's alibi, and in just a second, we're going to do that next. So will BK's family be allowed in the courtroom? Judge agreed that BK's parents and siblings shouldn't be punished for the alleged actions of their brother or son. Given the length of the public and the publicity of the trial, he suggested a way to alleviate concerns would be for the witnesses to be called out of order from the prosecution's plan. He said with a 3-month trial scheduled, the court won't be held hostage by either side's ideal case narrative. This is like a gumbo. This is what he told prosecutors. You are going to put all the pieces into the pot, and at the end of the day, the jury is going to decide whether it's good soup or not. So he issued an order on Wednesday asking prosecutors to submit to him by April 25th a list of BK's family members that they intend to call at the trial and the purpose for calling them. And the state has to explain why family members can't be called earlier in the proceedings. And then he'll decide on May 15th at another hearing, which I will be airing on this channel. So make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell. And he said the court understands and empathizes with concerns that the parents, having done nothing wrong and would have had the trauma they would have to endure because of a child being accused of and tried for a capital case, their desire to be present for their child. So I think that's really helpful. So let's talk about the wins and the losses. Just want to go through. I found this in one of the Idaho groups, and I thought it was really, really helpful. Let me take down this banner for a second so you can look at it. Okay, so basically what this is just wins, shows wins for prosecution, loss for prosecution. So number one is bushy eyebrows are allowed. The defense's claims of incompetency unfairly prejudice the jury, that somehow, Dylan wasn't competent because she'd been drinking, denied. Number 2, the Amazon knife sheath pre-crime purchase, the status on the check, shipping, arrival, post-crime. So for those of you that don't know, the knife sheath was delivered to the Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home. It was delivered there, and guess whose name was on the package? Bryan Kohberger's name. So the knife sheath, so the defense's claim that the AI made him purchase the knife sheath is denied. The knife and the knife sheath is going to come in. His search history on Amazon is coming in. Next, autism, OCD, the DCD, where he couldn't tie his shoes, but again, he was in preschool when that happened. He was like 4 or 5 years old. Only admitted if Bryan Kohberger takes the stand. So denied. Defense DNA expert. Defense didn't want the prosecution DNA expert. Denied. The Ms. Nolan can testify. Defense said it was incriminating evidence, inflammatory evidence. They're talking about the searches. They didn't want the searches for the knife sheath to come in. Denied. The 3D model house that Ann Taylor characterized as a dollhouse is, quote, a supplement, the testimony of the witnesses to assist the jury in obtaining a better understanding of the facts at issues. The model house that the prosecution created is allowed. The defense's objection that it's not 100% accurate, that motion is denied. State 404, prior traffic stop. So we knew that BK had this traffic stop, and Ann Taylor didn't want this traffic stop to come in because she said it was going to prejudice the jury. The judge is simply going to redact the portion where he's arguing with the law enforcement officer about giving his phone number, but it is coming in. So that's a win for the prosecution, because the judge, the Latah County judge, Judge John Judge, wasn't going to allow that to come in. And because they were wanting to put it in to prove that he was, surveilling the victim. So it's not coming in like that, but it's coming in to identify that it is Bryan Kohberger, that it is his white Hyundai Elantra, and maybe some identifying information on that car. So it's coming in. The make model of suspect vehicle 1. The defense felt like it was unfairly prejudicial. This motion the defense motion has been denied. The state may present expert opinion that the vehicles depicted in the video are the same as suspect vehicle 1, as well as the make and model of the car will be based on logical, educated inferences drawn by law enforcement from the surveillance video as suspect vehicle 1. Was defendant's Hyundai Elantra that circled the 1122 King Road home for 30 minutes, stopped and parked at the house for 12 minutes, and then sped off at 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed? That will be up to the jury to decide. Losses for the prosecution, improper DP, capital punishment. Ann Taylor made what the prosecution was characterizing as an inflammatory remark about the prosecution. She said that they were trying to do away. She used the K word. So schmill with a K. She said that the judge said that she can use that. She can say that. So that was a win for the defense. I don't know if that really helps that much. The other wins for the defense was to exclude the terms psychopath or sociopath as being prejudicial. The judge granted this motion because there's no evidence that BK has ever been diagnosed as a psychopath or a sociopath. The statistical analysis regarding the likelihood ratio of the DNA found underneath Maddie's fingernails. The defense was wanting to directed toward the prosecution's questioning of the lab assistant and not lab, sorry, lab analyst at the grand jury proceedings. There, the analyst testified that her DNA showed the profile developed from the knife sheath was in the 5.37 octillion, more likely to be Bryan Kohberger's than the source of an unrelated, individually random person in the general population. So that cheek swab is coming in, but the likelihood ratio on of what was found underneath Maddie's fingernails will not be coming in. The defense won that one. So I think that's helpful, because if it was anything less than 0, that was going to be bad news. So let's continue on. The timing advance, which we went into in detail during our last live stream. Cy Ray's unreasonable conspiracy theory of no timing advance records for the time period when the defendant's phone was intentionally shut off, and not reporting timing advance data to be collected. It would be nothing more than harassing, confusing, and repetitive and irrelevant since it's non-existent. The judge denied it. And he characterized Cy Ray's letter that he wrote as a conspiracy theory. The alibi, Bryan Kohberger's alibi. We're going to talk about the number one thing that we all missed and the 5 biggest takeaways in just a second. So please stay with me. The BK failed to comply with notice requirements governing alibi and forever cannot offer evidence of the alibi. Just even according to Ann Taylor, it's a partial alibi. And the judge denied it. The judge denied it. If BK wants to have an alibi, then he has to give a specific alibi. And the judge granted him more time to do this. He has to give, a place and a time that lines up with when these crimes were committed, not, before 3 a.m. or after 4:20 a.m. So denied. Now, Ann Taylor will be allowed to question the FBI Agent Balance. She wanted to question him during the hearing. Judge said no, but she could question this agent outside of the presence of the jury. And if the agent said that he received the AT&T records and didn't turn them over to the prosecution, then the judge would reconsider. But if he said no, that he never received them, then that's the end of it. And that's that. And Ann Taylor agreed to that during the last hearing. The judge reminded her she was an officer of the court. So defense expert Nolan will testify about the touch and contact DNA transfer. The court was unwilling to prohibit the term. The defense's argument was that she was not qualified to render an expert opinion. He denied that. To prohibit the term schmurder with an M, he said it's not necessary. That describes accurately. She wanted it to be every way you could use that word. She wanted it. Judge denied it, said, nope, this is a capital case. It comes in. Ann Taylor wanted to exclude the unnoticed 404B evidence like the Amazon and defendant's graduate essay detailing how to minimize forensic evidence at a crime scene that also happened to be a stabbing, as well as, this is a paper he wrote while he was at DeSales, and unforeseen filings, except these do not fall under 404. The judge said they were 4 months away from the trial, and so he denied that motion as well. I love whoever summarized this. It's floating around on Facebook. Stalemate. Okay, so this is like no win, no loss. The defense discretionary term of touch and trace DNA. So the defense didn't want to be them to be allowed to use the term touch DNA because it would somehow infer that BK had touched the knife sheath. Basically, the judge said, just try. This was kind of a stalemate. He just said, just try not to use the word touch DNA, but I'm not going to disallow it. He pointed out that Dr. Ruth Ballard, who was a defense expert, references touch DNA in her own report. If Ballard limits her testimony of secondary transfer, the court will reconsider the scope of Nolan's primary transfer rebuttal, which I don't think Ann Taylor's going to want to do that, but we'll see what she decides. IgG, both parties, for various reasons, have already agreed they're not going to bring up IgG DNA because what the prosecution is going to bring up is that cheek swab that they had a court order for. They got his cheek swab. And then the court said that they need to get together, the prosecution and defense together, and decide together what they're going to say about how law enforcement was led to Bryan Kohberger. Because the prosecution is just saying it's a tip. Next is the fingernail clippings, which is the defense is characterizing it as inconclusive. The lab analyst Jade Miller testified that inconclusive meant she was unable to say one way or another whether or not it was the defendant, Bryan Kohberger's, included in the mixture. The defense argued that it allows for inference that Bryan Kohberger might be included. The state simply said that they're not planning to offer the results as inculpatory, which means including Bryan Kohberger evidence. So both sides agreed that it is moot. So what are we still waiting on? We're still waiting on the authenticating records. 60 exhibits not yet certified must be discussed. Are the animal hairs in there? Is the victim's ID that was found inside a glove, inside a box, allegedly at his parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania? We still have a lot of stuff, so we have another hearing to go through. The alternative perpetrator evidence. The judge prohibited this without first making an offer of proof. So the defense has to show something. You can't just malign somebody's character and offer them as an alternative suspect or alternative perpetrator without some kind of proof. And he required that Ann Taylor submit that to him by May 14th of 2025. So he held off on ruling on that. The conditions as an aggravator, the state cannot use the autism diagnosis, but the state can argue against and rebut the diagnosis once they get to the mitigation phase, and that's if Bryan Kohberger is found guilty. So it's granted, but in part only. So kind of a stalemate there. All right, so let's go through the 5 biggest takeaways. All right, let's go through the 5 biggest takeaways in this. Let me check in with chat. I do want to say hello. Sorry, I hope I'm not being unsocial. I've just there's like so much to unpack. And if you want me to do like a wonkier one where I literally read every motion to you on the air, I can do that. But I also think that you guys could do that yourselves. I don't know if you need me to read it to you. So anyway, welcome. Come on in. Tell me where you're from. Bring your questions. Happy Easter, Pepper. Thank you so much for modding today, Mike and Njaz and Pepper. I'm a meme girl is here. Much love. Happy Easter, Christine. So it's Easter weekend. Come on in. Tell me what you guys are doing for Easter. Las Vegas girl, welcome. Hi, Donna. Lenny's here. Florence is here. I'm a meme girl is here. Good to see you too. ASAP Lizzie, hello. Great to see you. Truth Exposed. Glad you're here. Brother Mike said, mods, please help in chat and welcome others. Watch for the trolls. Yeah. And give this a thumbs up. Yeah. Let me know what number you are on the thumbs up and what motion that you think stood out the most to you. And I'm going to tell you the one thing that we all missed in just a second. So please stay with me. Yeah. Lizzie's from New York. Welcome. Shelly's here. Northern California. That's a beautiful part of the country. Hi, Kathleen. Happy Easter weekend to you also. Hi, Jeff. Happy Easter. Hi, Jet Girl. Happy Passover too. Yes, of course. Happy Passover for those that celebrate Passover. Little Kuza is from Nottingham in the UK. And if you don't celebrate either, that's fine too. Hi. All right, Mary's here. Texas Rangers here. Felicity. Hi, Dabs. Good to see you. Happy Easter. Hi, Brenda. Great to see you. All right. And Veronica's here. Veronica, thank you so much for getting the notice that I was going live on this out today. I really, really appreciate you. This is our other head mod. This is Sixth Sense Amelia. Happy Easter. Good to see you. Hi, Minoda. Welcome from Ascot, England. Poor Buddy. Yeah, Buddy's It's really sad. It's me. Mike is here. Barbara Young says she's number 102 to give a thumbs up. Thank you so much. And Jody said, Utah, it's cold here. Oh my gosh, but you guys have beautiful skiing, right? Poco, blessed Easter to everyone in the UK. Vic Star said, did you see the deleted search that Bryan Kohberger did for the Amazon versions? Yes, I did. We're going to talk about that. Yeah, so we'll just talk about it now. Bryan Kohberger did a search on Amazon and he deleted his search history. So that, to me, it's not a great look. So yeah, and then the Amazon knife and knife sheath was delivered to the house, and it wasn't delivered to his parents or his sister. It was delivered to his name at his Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home where he was living. I don't think his sisters were living there at the time. Sarah said, if he was a butcher and filleted fish and you're a vegan, the thing about his aunt's dishes don't make sense to me. Well, I don't know. You'll have to see if he takes the stand and answers those questions. It's a fair question. I agree. Happy Easter to you too, Michelle. Good to see you guys. Hi, PJ. Donna says, 2, you don't leave evidence, especially circumstantial. And 3rd, you look where the cameras are and avoiding them or dismantle them. Yeah. Hey, Zio. Brenda Lee says she's number 57 on the thumbs up. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that. Let me, oh gosh, wow. Thank you to NJAS for gifting 5 reporter room memberships. If you got one of those memberships, please make sure you say thank you to NJAS. And, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you so much, NJAS. Thank you to Brother Mike for the $1.99 super stickers. I did order new headphones. Here's my old ones. Let me see if I can pull these up. I tried to replace these. My old ones broke. So here they are. So I kept them because I was trying to find a replacement. I was trying to get the same ones. I had no luck finding the same one. So I ordered a different brand. I hope that they're okay. I want to thank Kami for being a channel member for 23 months. Thank you so much, Kami. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Kami, for the $1 super sticker. That is so nice of you. Thank you, and happy Easter to you. And thank you, Shelly, for the $14.99 help for the computer fund. Yes, I have the computer, and I'm just I'm about to get it, but I had to get the headphones first because obviously not having headphones on. I keep petting my hair. I'm sorry. I'll try not to pet my hair. Okay. So thank you so much, Shelly. I will be definitely putting that toward the computer. All right. So come on in. Tell me what you guys think about this. We're going to go through the 5. Let's go through we went through the judge's rulings. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how they hurt and help Bryan Kohberger. And then, but let's talk about the 5 biggest takeaways from the judge's rulings. And then the number one thing that we all missed. So let's go through that. So let's talk about I don't want to get too wonky. If you want me to get more wonky, I have the court docs pulled up. I can go through court docs, but I just thought it'd be easier to just go through them. So in one of the orders, the judge ruled that the term bushy eyebrows would not be struck from the trial. So this paves the way for Dylan's testimony. She is going to be allowed to use the term bushy eyebrows. He said that DM's, he's talking about Dylan Mortensen, testimony about bushy eyebrows is highly relevant in this case. He said that she is the only eyewitness to the intruder responsible for these crimes. He used the H asides word. It is the jury's task to determine whether the defendant is that person. So he's leaving it up to the jury. He continued and said that Dylan's testimony was remarkably consistent. So he found her to be consistent over the 5 interviews with police following the crimes, as well as her testimony before a grand jury that unanimously indicted Bryan Kohberger on 4 counts of murder. The judge denied the defense effort to keep her testimony about his bushy eyebrows, writing that it won't be unfairly prejudicial against Bryan Kohberger. The judge wrote, quote, DM's testimony about bushy eyebrows is highly relevant in this case. He said, DM's the only eyewitness to the intruder responsible for the homicides with an H, it is the jury's task to determine whether the defendant is that person. Number 2. So right now we're going through um, the 5 biggest takeaways. Second biggest takeaway. The judge issued an order regarding BK having family in the courtroom, while defense attorney Elizabeth Massoff said in court that his family had no interest in cooperating with the state. Prosecutors revealed during a hearing last week that they were going to call a few relatives as witnesses. And I'm wondering if this is related to um, either A, the fact that his sisters believed he might have committed this crime, or B, let me know if you think it's related to one of these things. B, put an A in the chat if you think it's related to the fact that his sisters allegedly thought he committed this crime, or B, if it's related to the Amazon purchases that they just want the family members to come up on the stand and say they did not order the knife sheath, or the knife sharpener. Let me know if you think it's A or B of why the prosecution wants to call his family members, a few, not all, relatives to the stand. The judge told the prosecutors to please submit a list of family members that will testify, why they will be called, and why they can't be called right at the start of the trial. So what he's saying is, let's just take them out of order so they can sit in for the trial. He said the court would try and find a balance between BK's right to have supporters present at a public trial and the prosecution's interest in keeping the witnesses sequestered. So the judge, he will clarify, the court's rulings clarified what evidence and testimony will be allowed in when the trial begins. These rulings are really important. They're really, really important. So the court ruled on several pretrial motions, including using prejudicial language. Ann Taylor didn't want the word schmurder in, and I'm watching my words here, and for him to be referred to as one, even though that's what this case is about. The judge denied that. The prosecution said they didn't want Ann Taylor to be able to say that they were trying to do away with Bryan, and judge denied that also. 3, biggest takeaway. In a decision on emotionally charged terminology, the judge denied a defense motion that would prohibit the word schmurder when referring to Kohberger, stating it was necessary because the prosecution agreed to use the term only in the context of the allegations. So he said it was unnecessary. Let me clarify. Unnecessary, because the prosecution's not planning to just throw it around willy-nilly. They're going to use it in terms of what happened. Number 4, the court granted the defense request to exclude the terms sociopath and psychopath because Bryan Kohberger does not have a diagnosis of either one of those. 5, the court rejected a request to limit what the defense can say about the DP, the capital punishment, and denied a motion to block certain character evidence. The judge clarified that for this type of evidence to be excluded, it must suggest a pattern of criminal behavior. And he ruled that BK's Amazon purchases and graduate papers would be allowed to be seen by the jury. So I'm going to do some bonus ones. 6, both sides agreed not to introduce evidence through the investigative IGG. Instead, the state will rely on a tip that led to BK, and both the prosecution and defense will decide what that tip is going to be. I'm sure the prosecution has what they're going to say. They just have to work it out with the defense. Number 7, the court also reserved rulings on a motion involving evidence of alternative perpetrators. So he hasn't said that Ann Taylor cannot present alternative perpetrators, but what he does want is he wants the defense to submit offers of proof by a set deadline. So she has to prove that somehow this person could have committed the crime. She can't just pick somebody at random. So I think that's interesting. Number 8, on the topic of DNA evidence, the judge granted a motion to exclude misleading population comparisons related to the likelihood ratio that were presented to the grand jury. So Maddie's DNA, the likelihood ratio number is not coming in. I don't know if we'll ever know what it was. However, the judge will not restrict similar questioning during the trial. A defense motion to exclude testimony about inclusive DNA likelihood ratio was also denied as moot because the state has already said it's not going to use the likelihood ratio in its case as inculpatory evidence. So I don't know if we'll ever find out what that likelihood ratio was. I sure would love to know. Number 9, the court upheld the relevance of BK's Amazon activity, which reportedly included a purchase of a knife sheath similar to the one found at the crime scene bearing his DNA. He said, quote, the court found it highly relevant. So not only did Bryan Kohberger purchase a K-bar knife and sheath on Amazon using his own name, his own email, but he had it shipped to his parents' house. The same week he ordered the knife, he also checked on the shipping status of his order. So he wanted to see, was it shipped? And after the crimes, BK went back to Amazon to try to delete. So after the crimes, he went back to Amazon. He tried to delete his account activity, and he was also searching for a replacement K-bar knife and sheath. So I think the jury's going to want to know, where's your knife? Because it wasn't found in the Pullman apartment. The knife or the knife sheath wasn't found in his car, wasn't found in his office, and it wasn't found in his parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania house. So why do you need a replacement knife? And why do you need a replacement sheath? What happened to yours? I think that's going to be relevant. And we're going to talk about the number one thing we all missed in just a second. Number 10, a motion by the prosecution to admit the AT&T advanced timing records. This has been hotly debated right here on this channel in the comment section. A lot of people feel like, Cy Ray is the man and he's going to provide the alibi. I did not think if the judge decided he was going to stick to the law that a partial alibi was going to fly, because you have to say where you were at the time of the crimes. And Cy Ray could not testify to that. So the motion by the prosecution to admit the AT&T timing advance records was granted with some conditions, allowing Ann Taylor a brief voir dire of a federal agent, that's Agent Balance, but it will not be done in the presence of the jury, but limiting further questions. So if the agent denies receiving the AT&T advanced timing records, that's the end of it. And this whole conspiracy theory, that's the judge, how he characterized it, of the 7 days, and the fact that AT&T only held the records for 7 days back in 2022 is done. He's not going to allow it into the court. So I think that's huge. So I don't know what Cy Ray is going to testify to. I still expect he will take to the stand and try to, poke some holes. But I don't think him saying that the FBI knew about it and didn't give it to the defense is going to fly unless the FBI says that they did know about it. Number 11, other rulings about the 3D model of the 1122 King Road home to be used as demonstrative evidence. He did rule that would be allowed in. So they can use it for the purpose of pointing out where things were. He talked about how the house had a complicated layout plan and that the victims were done away with in 2 different bedrooms. Number 12, the court will also allow testimony from the forensic expert Riley Nolan. She is expected to speak on the nature of DNA transfer. She is a prosecution witness. While her opinion on the DNA on the knife sheath is more likely from direct transfer was permitted, the court instructed both parties to try to avoid the use of the term touch DNA, contact DNA, and trace DNA. So I think we're just going to hear the words DNA. For 13, the court further barred testimony about BK's mental health evaluations to explain his courtroom demeanor unless BK takes the stand. Unless he takes the stand, there's not going to be anybody put on the stand to talk about his courtroom demeanor. He felt like it would draw more attention to his courtroom demeanor and that it would hurt him rather than help him. Number 14, it is reserved or granted other motions related to potential expert testimony on BK's physical capability to commit the crime. Now he, was using the Strava app, which I showed you guys proof in a prior live stream that he used the Strava app. It's a good GPS. It's better than GPS because it follows you wherever your phone goes. And I thought maybe the Strava app could be used to implicate or exonerate him. but it also shows that he could run a 6-minute mile. And having fine motor skill problems when you're in preschool or kindergarten don't really matter when you're in your late 20s. And also, is, you know, this a fine motor skill, being able to do this? No, it's not. Fine motor skill would be, tying your shoes or writing. Those are fine motor skills. This kind of action, not fine motor skills. So the rulings establish boundaries for both the prosecution and the defense. Number 15, while his defense attorney, Elizabeth Massoth, said in court that his family had no interest in cooperating with the state, the prosecutors revealed at a hearing last week that they would call a few relatives as witnesses. So let's talk about some of the big takeaways. We know the K-bar knife. We know now that that went to his Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home. And we're going to talk about the number one thing we all missed in just a moment. So please stay with me. So that's new. Very interesting. We knew that he purchased the knife sheath. And I've been reporting since a year ago that he purchased it in the spring of 2022. Now we know he bought it on Amazon. He bought it in March of 2022. We didn't know where these items, the knife and knife sheath, were delivered. Now we do. They were delivered in his name. He checked to see if the order was going to be arriving, when it was going to be arriving. And then he also deleted his search history on the K-bar knife from his Amazon account after the crimes were committed. And then he researched for a new K-bar knife and knife sheath. We learned that Dylan has been very consistent about her claims of seeing a man with bushy eyebrows. We also learned that Dylan was accurately describing a balaclava mask or ski mask right from the beginning of her interviews. She had 5 interviews with law enforcement, and she had the height correct right at the beginning. She said he was athletic but not muscular. And we're now learning that she described him as kind of a basketball player style of body, which I think is like a thin muscular physique. So I think that does fit Bryan Kohberger. He is 6 feet tall. He does have a thin body, and it will be up to the jury to decide whether or not he has bushy eyebrows. What else did we learn? We learned that the fine motor skill issues did indeed stem from childhood and are not relevant to him now. This is not something that is currently affecting him. We learned also, and this is huge, that the judge is not going to accept a partial alibi. So this is Idaho law. Let me pull that up for you guys. I do want to pull that up. Let's see. Let me put state of Idaho. Let's pull that up so you guys can see what the law is. Notice of alibi. Okay, let me show this. This is just telling me when it was adopted, but I need to see the alibi itself. Oh my gosh, these are so wonky. I'm just trying to find one that's like just states it pretty clearly. Oh, this is perfect. Okay, let's do this one. Let me take this down. Let's do this one. Okay. This is perfect. Okay, make sure I'm not in your way. No, I'm not. Okay, good. Let's go through this. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to go through and highlight the thing because it's not long. But I just want to show you what the law is and why the judge came to this decision. So, notice of defense of alibi. 1, at any time after the arraignment, before a magistrate, upon a complaint, upon written demand of the prosecuting attorney, the defendant shall serve within 10 days or at a different time as the court may direct upon the prosecuting attorney a written notice of his intention to offer a defense of alibi. Such notice by the defendant shall state the specific place or places at which the defendant claims to have been at the time of the alleged offense, and the names and addresses of witnesses of whom he intends to rely on to establish an alibi. So this partial alibi does not fall within that, which is, I think, why the judge is saying no. He said Bryan Kohberger can take the stand, but no partial alibi. But he did extend Bryan Kohberger's opportunity to provide a real alibi. Number 2, this is not me saying this, this is the judge. Within 10 days after receipt of the defendant's notice of alibi, but in no event less than 10 days before the trial, unless the court otherwise directs, the prosecuting attorney shall serve upon the defendant or his attorney a written notice stating the names and addresses of the witnesses upon whom the prosecution intends to rely to establish the defendant's presence at the scene of the alleged offense and any other witnesses to be relied on to rebut testimony of any of the defendant's alibi witnesses. Number 3. I like this because it's not too wonky. If prior to or during the trial, a party learns of an additional witness whose identity, if known, should have been included in the information furnished under subsection 1 or subsection 2 of this section, so that's, I read you 1 and 2, the party shall promptly notify the other party or his attorney of the existence and identity of such additional witnesses. So if anything comes up, and suddenly they have a witness, they can notify. 4, upon the failure of either party to comply with the requirements of this section, the court may exclude the testimony of any undisclosed witnesses offered by such party as to the defendant's absence from the presence at the scene of the alleged offense. This section shall not limit the right of the defendant to testify in his own behalf. And the judge has said Bryan Kohberger can take the stand and say where he was. Number 5, for good cause shown, the court may grant an exception to any of the requirements of the subsections through 1 through 4. So it does give the judge some leeway. So what did the judge actually decide on this? So that's the law that the judge is having to adhere to. And I didn't think he was going to change case law just to support Bryan Kohberger. But the judge is not going to accept a partial alibi and said that if BK wants to provide an actual alibi, he can, and he granted Bryan Kohberger more time to do this. However, if Bryan Kohberger does not provide this, then he will have to take the stand to provide his own alibi. I don't think the defense team is going to want him on the stand. Let me know what you think. And we're going to talk about the number 1 thing we all missed. Oh, we also learned, and this is huge, that traffic stop on August 21st, this is not the one that I've showed you guys the body cam footage where he was in the crosswalk and he was talking to the female police officer. This is one we haven't seen the body cam footage on. It's not the 2 traffic stops of him and his dad driving from Pullman, Washington to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. This is a different traffic stop that took place on August 21st of 2022. The defense did not want the jury to see this traffic stop. They said they felt like it was prejudicial because Bryan was arguing, I guess, with the police officer about his phone number. Now, the judge said he would redact that part, but the jury gets to see the rest. It sounds like the defense was very worried about the fact that the jury was going to see that Bryan Kohberger drove a white Hyundai Elantra that fits and matches suspect vehicle 1 and probably matches the 12 hours of raw footage of the Hyundai Elantra going to the crime scene and leaving from the crime scene. So I think that's the real reason that Ann Taylor did not want the jury to see the car. They're going to see the car. And the judge said that it's evidence and the jury has a right to see it and the jury can decide for themselves. Okay. Let's see where we're at. Let me back up chat. I'm like really behind here. Let me back up. Tell me what you guys think. I want to hear what your feelings about this. Barbara said, so you are a vegan for ethical reasons, but you will allegedly. Yeah. It doesn't mean that he's a vegan for ethical reasons. We don't know what his reasons are. It could just be he doesn't like the taste of meat. It could be for ethical reasons. I mean, we don't know. But yeah. I mean, he did away with, allegedly, he's being accused. He's facing trial of doing away with 4 young people. So why would a dog be exempt? When is jury selection? Good question, Donna. Jury selection starts on July the 30th. Chris said, I'm from Prescott, Arizona. Welcome. Hi, Barbara. Come on in. I want to hear your questions. Yeah. And Josh says 809 watching, only 279 likes. Yeah, come on, you guys. It's Easter. Give me some slack here. Even if you don't like what the judge ruled, please don't take it out on me. I'm just reporting out the news. As Z06 said, Amazon AI made me buy it. Yeah, I didn't think that dog was going to hunt with this jury, and it didn't hunt. Hi, Chris. Mike says, yeah, BK wanted to be more popular. Now he's all for the he's all for the wrong reasons. Very interesting. Amy said, I'm a vegan, and just like meat eaters, you can't paint us all with one brush, guys. Yeah. Good point, Amy. Betsy Russ said, poor Bryan, he's just super unlucky. Right. So he's, either the most unlucky person ever, or he did it. I mean, I have people that come in, somebody said, well, I drive a white Hyundai Elantra, so I guess I committed the crime. Well, I don't know. Was your DNA found under the knife sheath? On the snap of the knife sheath, found underneath into the side of Maddie. There's some questions about that too, where people are like, well, what about the DNA with Maddie and all of that? And what I would say is, they said, well, one officer described it to the side of Maddie, one said it was underneath. And I think it was both, underneath and to the side. If you have, let me use my broken headphones as an example. If I had my headphones found underneath me and a little bit to the side like this, it would be underneath. Let me see if I get it on camera. Underneath and to the side of me, right? It'd be underneath and to the side of me. So you could use both to describe it. So yeah, his DNA is found underneath on the snap of the knife sheath. He ordered this knife sheath, so it links back to him. His car, his white Hyundai Elantra without a front license plate, is on. We have 12 hours of raw footage that Ann Taylor was refusing to go through. Well, the jury is going to see it. Bab said, I need a t-shirt that says that. Oh. And Josh says, people hiding in the bushes, please hit the thumbs up. Yeah. Please put Buddy back up. Oh, you don't want to look at Bryan. Yeah. Hi, John. It's okay. You can back up the chat. For those of you that don't know, you can always back up a chat. No worries. If you're late, you can back up the chat and still watch the whole thing. Kami, yeah, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. We are a fact-based channel and welcome all respectful opinions. Yes, if you're the type of person who likes to have all of the information so you can make up your own mind, that you are in the right place. I didn't bring you guys nonsense about tunnels being under the house. I tried to stick to credible information for you guys. I feel like you guys deserve credible information. Shelley said, I think Agent Balance will deny receiving the AT&T records, and then she has nothing. Yeah, nada. No, I don't think I agree. I mean, the 7 days was just, I tried to explain it. I kept explaining it. And I'm just like, after trying to explain it repeatedly, I just, I did go into detail of why the 7 days, why AT&T back in 2022 only kept their cell phone records for 7 days. And people said, oh, but the cell phone tower dumps. Yeah, he had his phone turned off during the crime. During the time of the crime, it was turned on as he drove toward the area. It got turned off, and then it was turned back on after he sped away from the area. Allegedly, he's innocent until proven guilty. But, the cell phone record, so he wouldn't have shown up in the tower dump, which was just a 2-hour window. That's all the judge would allow for that. So his phone number wasn't going to show up in the cell phone tower dump, and it wasn't going to be available for law enforcement to request his cell phone record within the 7 days, because they didn't find out who he was until December 19th. They didn't know he was the suspect. And so November 13th is when the crime was committed. December 19th is weeks later, not 7 days later. It's like 5 weeks later. 6 weeks later, they figure out maybe like 5 weeks later, they figured out that it's him. And they identified him as the suspect. Well, then they couldn't get it. They did ultimately get the AT&T records in 2023, and they did provide them to Ann Taylor. So Ann Taylor did get them. But what she was trying to say was that, that Cy Ray had talked to an FBI agent who was unnamed. And I think if you're going to say that, you do need to name who the agent is, tell the judge. And the time to tell the judge that would have been on the April 9th hearing. The name wasn't said. And that, he had it on word that the FBI had access to BK's AT&T records. But again, you have to say who you talk to. And the judge characterized it as a conspiracy theory. And I'm not saying this to in any way put down Cy Ray. I think he's, doing his job. But unless Agent Balance says that he got those AT&T records from AT&T for Bryan Kohberger in the first 7 days, it's over. And Ann Taylor doesn't get to do it. It doesn't get to present any conspiracy theories about the FBI somehow withheld all of this. And I've seen the conspiracy theories in the comment section. I'm just urging caution here, guys, because, for a conspiracy theory to occur, it would involve probably 100 people. You would have to believe that the FBI is involved in an ongoing conspiracy that's been going on for years. The Idaho State Police in a conspiracy to frame this guy. Nobody knew who Bryan Kohberger was. If they wanted to frame someone, the DoorDash delivery would have been easier. The roommates would have been easier. A friend of the roommates would have been easier. Not some random guy. They got him because his DNA was on that knife sheath and his car was circling. So I'm just urging caution. The Moscow Police Department, all of their law enforcement officers and all their CSI people and all the lab people would all have to be in a conspiracy together for years, because this case has been going for 2.5 years. And then the prosecution would also have to be involved in this conspiracy. So that's more people and all of their paralegals, and none of this conspiracy is leaking out into any of the mainstream media anywhere. And then lastly, the judge would have to be in on this conspiracy. So, I'm just saying, let's consider this from a critical thinker's standpoint. Would 100 people be able to all keep their mouths shut about a conspiracy? 100 plus people, which is what we're talking about, over a 2.5-year period? Or is the judge right? Is this whole thing with AT&T just an effort to distract from what really happened? Let me know what you think. If you have a different take than me, that's okay. Just please express it in a polite way. Didn't name anyone. That's okay. No worries. Yeah, please be respectful of each other in the chat. Zo6 said BK will never go to the stand. Ann Taylor does. It would be too bad. Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. Now he does have that option. They thought the same thing in the Alex Murdaugh case, and Alex Murdaugh did take the stand. It didn't go well for him, but he did take the stand. Amy said, yeah, that app showed how athletic he is. Yeah, the Strava app. For those of you like, what is she talking about? What is the Strava app? Let me pull that up and just show you what this is. So the Strava app was on Bryan Kohberger's cell phone. And this is really wanting me to sign up. Let me just see if there's I can find one that's just kind of about it. That's not trying to log me in. Okay. Still trying to sign me up, but that's fine. Let's try. So the Strava app does show, so it has GPS capabilities. It has the ability to analyze every aspect of it. And BK did have this on his cell phone, and it has good GPS. It syncs with most devices, your phone, GPS watch or head unit, heart rate monitor or power meter, and the records show just about any performance metric you can imagine, plus a few exclusive to Strava. And the Strava app showed that Bryan Kohberger could run a 6-minute mile. So again, that kind of, the whole thing, if I was too disabled to commit a crime like this, I don't think is really going to fly with this judge. I just don't think it is. Let's see. Shelley said he lost big time with their motions, justifiably, because they were ridiculous. Yeah, Mike says, I think he just wants to see the pictures at this point. He knows he's not getting out. Amy agrees. Lizzie says, tried to scrub clean his purchases. Yeah, he tried to delete his purchase history and his search history on Amazon for that K-bar knife after the crimes. So if he did it, like if he routinely cleaned all his cookies out every time he shopped, I would be like, okay. But he waited. He bought the knife in March of 2022. He didn't try to delete his Amazon search history until after the crimes in November or December. So yeah, good point. And just as try to go back out and come back in if you're having trouble, you guys. Brenda says, I didn't know you could delete your purchases on Amazon. He tried to delete his search history. Veronica said, I saw 2 large Strava trucks yesterday when I was out. I've never seen those before. I don't live in a big city. Oh, wow. So maybe you're getting Strava in your area. Maybe they're installing whatever they need to do for that area. Sounds like you have work trucks. Amy said, you'd be smarter than this given his degrees. You'd think he'd be smarter. Yeah, I mean, he was pretty smart. I think, he is innocent until proven guilty, but he was pretty smart. He did, I think, leave behind a minimal amount of DNA. He did that knife snap on that knife sheath is known to stick. Reviews under that knife sheath say that the snap sticks. So, he probably just had trouble with it. But I think, the unknown male DNA, according to his essay, which the jury is going to get to hear, he talked about how a perpetrator could leave unknown DNA, and Fox News talked about this also, that it's possible that he himself is the one that left the unknown male DNA in an attempt to, muddy the waters. But I think Antler will have, be able to present that. Julie said, can you get his phone calls? Is he video chatting with his family? I haven't received any, you're talking about jailhouse calls? We haven't gotten any of those yet. We have to wait for discovery. And that won't come until after the trial. Bushy eyebrows indeed. Kami says he is going to enjoy every moment. So a lot of people feel like BK is going to enjoy the trial, that his reasoning for committing this crime was because he wanted to, be infamous, and that his pursuit of a psychology degree was him trying to figure himself out, feeling like an empty meat sack and just feeling like he can't connect, looking at his father, knowing that he's a good man, but not feeling anything for him. So some of this, the psychology degree was, I think, Bryan Kohberger trying to figure out who he was. And the criminology degree, and I'll just, ask this a question, could this have been Bryan Kohberger figuring out who he wanted to be? And so he's studying BTK, he's studying Ted Bundy, he's studying these other criminals. And did this make him feel like this is who I want to be? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I want to welcome ASAP Lizzie as a brand new Reporter Room channel member. Thank you so much for being a channel member. And also Shannon Nelson, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. She says, I could see him doing that if Buddy was alerting him to surveilling the girls. Absolutely. Well, the house where the Colberts live is not, it's between his Pullman apartment and the 1122 King Road house, but it's not like right next door. It's kind of in the middle between the two houses. And I think I have, let me see if I have it handy. I don't know if I have it handy. I think I have a map. I know I have a map. I just don't know if it's handy or not. If it's not handy, that's okay. I'll show it another time. Let's see if I have Buddy handy. Nope, not handy. I have it on my external hard drive, which I don't want to try to dig into right now. All right, we're going to talk about the number one thing we all missed. Okay, and we're going back to Bryan Kohberger. Oh my gosh, you guys, before I forget to do this, let me take this down. We're not done, but I just do want to say thank you to our producers. I don't want to leave this till I forget. and Jazz, Sasha, Angel, George, Brown, and Pepper. Thank you so, so much. And thank you to our channel members. If you would like to have your name appear like this in all of my videos and live streams and have a check mark next to your name in the top chat, you can hit the join button. It is next to the subscribe button. I'm also have merch coming out next week, and channel members will be getting a 10% discount code for merchandise. And so I have that coming. It'll be out right after Easter. So thank you to all of our channel members for allowing me to cover this case. I really, really appreciate each and every one of you. You guys are awesome. And I also would love to do super thanks and coffee gratitude to Christine, Gatto, Rebecca, Bruce, Brother Mike, Leslie, Keep It Real. Oh my gosh, I can't read them fast enough. Thank you so much for your super stickers, and thank you for gifted channel members. These are from the last live stream. And I had a lot of super thanks because of the broken headphones. So thank you guys, all of you. I did order new headphones and they will be here on Monday, and I look forward to showing them to you. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for the gifted channel memberships. And Jazz, if you've been in the live stream, you know that we've been doing those. All right, so let's get into the number one thing we all missed. So there's been a lot of questions about Bryan Kohberger's supposed autism, and I shared with you that somebody who's autistic, they would have a different imaging information than somebody who is sociopathic or psychopathic. So people with autism have difficulty expressing emotion, and they have difficulty reading your emotion, but they feel emotion. They feel it. And if you've ever seen Love on the Spectrum on Netflix, you know that they feel connections with other people. They just have difficulty reading other people's social cues and expressing and giving social cues, but they feel it. So when they've done studies on people who have autism versus people who are sociopathic and psychopathic, and they've shown them images that are, cute animals or very disturbing images, the brain of a person who is autistic lights up completely differently than the brain of somebody who is sociopathic or psychopathic. So the person with autism will light up with empathy or with horror or revulsion, whereas the person with sociopathy and psychopathy, their brains will not light up. They don't feel those things, or they feel them in a very limited fashion. So BK's autism tests results, we were never shown them. All we got were the diagnoses. And I think this is huge. If BK's test results included brain imaging scans and actually proved that Bryan Kohberger had autism, then wouldn't Ann Taylor have been crowing that from the rooftops? Wouldn't she have mentioned that when she talked about BK having autism? Wouldn't she have attached the brain imaging or any of the testing that was done to her motions to prove and to put pressure on the prosecution to take capital punishment off the table, to put pressure on the judge to take capital punishment off the table? I think the one thing that we all missed is that she didn't do those things. And, she was willing to promote what the judge, said was basically a conspiracy theory regarding what Cy Ray said. She was willing to put that out there, but she wouldn't put out, ever did put out his autism, how they got the testing, how they got to this autism diagnosis. And I'm not saying he does have autism or doesn't, but I just think that we all missed the fact that she was not crowing from the rooftops that she had tests that proved he was autistic. Because I think this would have put pressure on the prosecution. Let me know if you have a different take on it. I think this autism diagnosis would have put pressure on the judge to maybe remove the capital punishment. So that's the big takeaway, the number one thing that I think we all missed. What was your big takeaway from the motions? Was there one thing that really surprised you? Was there one thing that made you feel, that made you go in one direction versus another direction? And I think, part of being, critical thinking is allowing for new information to come in and allowing for that to, possibly change your mind. If maybe you were all in on one theory or all in on another theory, like a lot of people were all in on the tunnels under the house theory. I think just, allowing the fact that, well, the house got torn down, there's no tunnels, just allowing for new information to come up, I think is, a good thing. That's a sign of a critical thinker. And that's what this channel is about. It's about sharing information with you guys, all the information, credibly sourced information. I never shared the tunnels under the house, but credibly sourced information so that you guys can make up your own mind. So I'm curious what you guys are doing for Easter. Let me know. If you have big plans, if you're celebrating Passover, welcome, happy Passover, sorry. Yeah, please give this a thumbs up. Please subscribe. Help me out. I can't get to 50,000 subscribers without your help, and I really could use your help. It's Easter, maybe an act of kindness. Karen said, I agree, BK's veganism is probably due to his OCD. If he truly has a level of autism, he was probably a picky eater. 06 said the judge knows the Idaho law as well. Yeah, he's not going to write new case law about I didn't think just because he has been such a stickler for the law, he's really been following. I didn't think he was going to allow this partial alibi, but I didn't know for sure, because it was, he does have the right, like I shared with you. Number 5 says he could have some discretion, but I think what he did was really fair. He said, no, you can't do a partial alibi, because how does the prosecution, refute that? They really can't. But he did give Bryan Kohberger more time to come up with an alibi, and also Bryan Kohberger can take the stand. So you're right. Blackhawk says, at this point, the families will never agree to a plea deal. It's too late for that. I agree. I think that Blackhawk is right. The victims' families are not going to agree to a plea deal. I think the prosecution to have, be able to come to a plea deal with Bryan Kohberger, that's why I think they would have had to have shown those test results. Now, Ann Taylor did ultimately turn them over to the prosecution. We haven't heard anything about them. And again, I think if the testing, I'm not talking about what doctor or, the diagnosis, I'm talking about the actual testing that led to that diagnosis. I think if the testing had supported it, I think you're right. I think that Ann Taylor would have absolutely been crowing that from the rooftops. And, that's something that we missed. Chris said, I have a master's level degree in criminology and forensics, quite more than Kohberger has, and so understand his psychology better than most. That is really great. I look forward to reading your comments. For Maga says, yes, without a doubt, he would have continued. And Lizzie said, he worked as a butcher too. That could change you. Sue Joy says, the defense has missed at least 2 alibi deadlines. He's still giving them till before the trial to possibly come up with one. You're correct. And I think that's because, this is a capital punishment case. We don't want to take a chance and find out that, he somehow, could have come up with something and didn't. So the judge is giving, and the Latah County judge repeatedly gave extensions on this deadline also, because the prosecution requested this alibi, I think like over 2 years ago. So they've had, lots of time to come up with an alibi. And then when we finally got the, stargazing and moon gazing on a foggy night, and even Ann Taylor characterized it as a partial alibi. And then when we looked at what the law is in Idaho about alibi, I just didn't think that this particular judge, just with what a stickler he is for the law, I just did not think that he was going to be, well, you know what, let's make new case law and just allow him to give a partial. I just didn't think he was going to do it, but I didn't know for sure. So yeah, very, very true. Okay. Shelley says he has no corroboration that goes to an alibi. Not yet. Not that we know of. Yeah, not that we know of. And Jazz says, I don't think the jury will like a no alibi, in my opinion. And Mike says, thanks for modding today, Mike. He says, I haven't seen American Psycho, but I saw some clips. I think he was inspired. A lot of people think the earbuds, people have, speculated on what Bryan Kohberger was listening to. And a lot of people think it was Huey Lewis, and that Bryan Kohberger was listening to Huey Lewis, because that's what I guess the character did on American Psycho. Brenda says she would love to see BK on the stand. I would too. I absolutely would. I have been streaming for an hour and a half. Let's see. Thank you so much, Jeannie, from the Seattle area for your $4.99 super sticker. Thank you. Jeannie says, shocked Ann Taylor complaining about the lack of time, also taking on another case. Yeah, I think she did a huge disservice, in my opinion, to Bryan Kohberger. If she really, she's telling the judge she doesn't have time to go through, 12 hours of raw video footage of the car. And the judge is like, but you took on another capital punishment case. If you didn't have time with the case you're on, why didn't you hire more paralegals? We just kind of pushed back on that. And I think it was a bid on her part for more time. And I think that the Latah County judge was more lenient about that. This judge, he is keeping things moving forward. I don't think he's going to give her more time. But I think we were all shocked to hear that she took on another capital punishment case when her first duty should have been to this case, in my opinion. Let me know if you have a different take on it. And and maybe she's fine on her time. But if she's an officer of the court, if she's blatantly lying to the judge about it, that's not good either. Hey, Jody. Mike said, in some words aren't allowed. ASVS, they won't show up. Yeah, if you guys are typing in certain words, you see I don't use them. It's because the filters will keep you. So you think someone's deleting your comment, I get told this sometimes in the chat too. Somebody deleted my comment. It's more than likely than that somebody deleted your comment. If you're being perfectly polite, it's more likely that you got caught in a filter and you're using some kind of word that YouTube doesn't like. And that's probably what happened. Blackhawk thinks that Bryan fabricated that alibi that he was out driving at the Wawa Y Park because Bryan knows Bill can prove he was out coming back to WSU at 5:25. He is better say he was out somewhere. I'm a meme girl says, I know I have been so very careful about that. Weird. I only said Bundy and then I saw someone else use that. So it shouldn't have been flagged. I don't know. It wasn't flagged by us. It's flagged by the YouTube algorithm. So I just want to make that really clear too. And the fish cutting, Betsy says the fish cutting proves that he is not uncoordinated. Yeah, he had a job as a butcher. He was, writing. He could tie his shoes. He could button his shirt. Look, his shirt's buttoned up. So and also doing away with someone using a knife is a gross motor skill. It's a big motor skill. It's not considered a fine motor skill. He had the Strava app, which showed he could run a 6-minute mile. Hello, Wicked. Glad you're here. Truth Exposed said someone like BK would have viewed Danny rolling as a loser, and he was. He even said he wanted to be more famous like Bundy when they asked him why he did it. Oh, wow. James said, big disappointment. Many people, including victims' families, became aware of the crimes early on, but failed to call police. Victims' families became aware of the crimes, but didn't call police. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, James. I have no idea. Victims' families, they got notified by police. They weren't calling police. So maybe I misread your comment. If I did, I'm sorry, but I really don't know what you're trying to say there. And sometimes that happens, and it could be me misreading it too. So I just want to put that out there. I guess I just want to. Lizzie thinks it's me, Mike, and supposedly Scream was loosely based on him, according to Wes Craven. Hannah says, as soon as I saw BK, I was sure they had the right guy because he looked just like the avatar Pappa Rogers used. I can't find the first time that avatar appeared in chat. Yeah, that was in a really good true crime group. I'm still in that true crime group. I stepped out of it for a little bit, but came back into it. But yeah, the Idaho murder true crime group is really, really good. Yeah, please don't use these words. If you're trying to leave me a comment and you see I don't say them, but if you try to leave them in a comment, your comment will get filtered out. I will not see your comment. Every once in a while, somebody will use that word and it'll get through the algorithm, but the majority of the time it'll be stuck in there. And I can't do anything about it because those words aren't allowed. Thank you so much, Barbara, for your encouragement and your kindness. I really, really appreciate it. Brother Mike said he looks like Pappa Roger. Yeah, I think I do think he was. I think that's why we have the meta warrant. Thank you so much, Brother Mike and Enjaz and Amelia for being our head mods. Thank you to all our mods today, especially Easter weekend. And for Enjaz, this is clicking over. She's in the UK, so this is clicking over into Easter. So happy Easter. Can I kick it? Says they have something showing he was trying to erase his YouTube searches. That's admission or knowledge of guilt. That shows. I don't know. I haven't heard about that. I just heard about the Amazon searches. Brenda said it's just a note. People don't have autism. They are autistic. It's not a disease. It's just like how they are built. It's a matter of changing the way we talk about autism and people who are autistic. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we do want to talk about it in a good way. The fact that he was, intently staring, one of the characteristics of, or hallmark characteristics of autism is not making eye contact. So I thought it was interesting that, we have all these reports of him staring from Idaho students, multiple reports at the University of Idaho where he did not attend, had no business to be on that campus. Well, guys, I think I'm going to leave it there. Please subscribe. Thank you so much for coming by to spend a little bit of time with me. If you want to follow me over, I am going to be doing Sebastian Rogers, and I'm going to be talking about Summer Wells today too. So you can follow me over there next, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.